Mm.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 16th edition of Dasra Philanthropy Week. For a decade and a half, DPW has been shaping conversations, sparking collaborations, and driving real impact across India's development landscape. And today, we kick off another incredible week, one that challenges us to think bigger, act bolder, and reimagine India's future together. As we move closer to India's centenary of independence, DPW 2025 is a platform for us to collectively envision a future rooted in equity, resilience, and opportunities for all. This year, under the theme Rising at 2047, we are bringing together visionary leaders, philanthropists, and change makers to explore bold collaborative solutions to systemic challenges and drive inclusive growth. And this year, TPW is bigger than ever. We are hosting 40 plus convenings, both virtual and in person, with 120 plus thought leaders, 1,000 plus stakeholders, and 20 partners, while also expanding to Bangalore for the first time. With the lens of India for the world for India, our discussions will deep dive into equity, collaboration, inclusion, innovation, measurement, and sustainability. Before we dive in, here are a few housekeeping reminders to ensure a seamless experience. Number one, to maintain clear audio and speaker focus, participant mics and videos have been disabled. Number two, please respect speaker privacy and refrain from sending personal messages. Use the chat feature to ask questions and engage in discussions. Number three, if you face technical issues, send a private message to the host for assistance. Number four, Hindi translation is available throughout the session. Simply press the globe icon to access it. Let's get started and thank you for joining us. With this, I'd also like to introduce today's moderator for the session, Amy Ayala, founder of Kindness Co, a media house which includes India's number one plant-based podcast, is an animal advocate and an influencer with an excess of 5 million followers across channels and a marketing specialist with over 15 years of experience in digital marketing and consumer behavior. Now, Amy's career is 100% focused on impact work with the goal of reshaping India's narrative when it comes to the use of animals. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Edna. Thank you so much, everyone. It's so good to have you here today. We are excited to be hosting Voices for the Voiceless, collaborative philanthropy for animal welfare. As India approaches a decade of independence, we're celebrating the theme of Rising at 2047. And today in India, we are facing a massive challenge with a severe cognitive dissonance when it comes to animal sentience. Animals, big and small, are stuck in a system which doesn't regard their welfare. And in today's session, the aim is to bring together key changemakers and philanthropists to explore the urgent need for collaborative efforts to tackle the pressing issues relating to animal welfare. Our panelists will be exploring the different ways in which we are using animals and discuss ways in which we can pool resources and expertise to become an India that we can truly be proud of. At the end of the session, you will have an opportunity to have your questions answered, and you can feel free to provide your questions as the talk goes on, and we will address those at the end. I would now like to introduce the panelists for today. We are joined by Bharti Ramachandran, CEO of Federation of Indian Animal Protection Organizations, FIAPO. We are also joined by Brinda Upadhyay, co-founder of Upadhyay Foundation. Also joined by Gauri Muleki, who's the Managing Trustee of People for Animals Public Policy Foundation, PFA, PPF. Also, Dr. Rajina Shahin, who is a Medical Director of Physicians Association for Nutrition, PAN. Mr. Sandeep Reddy, CEO of India Animal Fund. Sneha Singh, the Managing Director of the Good Food Institute, GFI. Sonia Fernandez, Chief Program Officer of Ashraya Harsa Trust. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today. It is going to be an illuminating conversation. I would first like to start by just unpacking animal sentience. And I would like to invite Sandeep, if you can please give us an overview of what does animal sentience even mean?
Sure, Amy, thank you. Hi, everyone. So, in as far back as 1789, a famous English philosopher said, "The question is not can they reason, can they talk, but can they suffer?" So, sentience is basically the ability of a being to suffer, the capacity of a being to suffer. And various scientific experiments and studies have shown that mammals and birds have complex nervous systems, including a neocortex, amygdala, limbic systems, all regions associated with emotions, problem solving, and decision making, like we have. Pigs are known to be smarter than dogs and as smart as 3-year-old children, and they can solve puzzles, yet they're considered a dirty animal. Cows, monkeys, elephants, dolphins, crows have best friends. They mourn their dead. They exhibit mourning behaviors for prolonged periods. Cows are put through various pains through their confinement, but the worst screams of pain are reserved when that calf is taken away from the mother. Even a being as which most people may not consider sentient, an octopus can experience distress and learn to avoid painful stimuli, clearly showing that they're capable of suffering and they want to avoid that suffering. Rats actually free their trapped friends, companions, even if there is no reward. It just shows that they feel for their own kind. So there is unquestionable evidence that animals are sentient. They have the capacity to suffer, and that's why there are so many countries. In fact, whole unions like the European Union recognizes animals as sentient beings. This was in 2009. The UK formally declared animals as sentient in 2022. New Zealand, Canada, parts of the US have implemented animal welfare laws based on sentience. And we believe that we are at an inflection point in India where sentience is being understood, and conversations like these will take the movement forward.
Thank you, Sandeep. Gauri, can you please explain to us the natural behaviors of animals and how they're being suppressed in factory farms at the moment?
Thank you, Amy. So, you're right. Most of the animals that are grown for food, milk, meat, and eggs are now confined more and more into factory farms. That is intensive confinement. They're kept in very, very crowded conditions. Therefore, the kind of behaviors which are very innate, which are very intrinsic to their existence, are not given a chance to be exhibited. For instance, I learned very late in life that for hens, it's very important to have a perch to sit on. They cannot sit on a metal wire mesh for the entirety of their lives. Their feet get all blistered and bruised because of it. Hens require very private space for nesting because they feel very vulnerable when the egg is coming out of their body, like any bird would feel, or like any mammal would feel while birthing a child. So it's the same sentiment. They want privacy, they want secrecy, they want to get to a nest box, they want to dust bathe. It's not just a physiological thing to get rid of ectoparasites, but it also kind of makes them happy. And these are very, very innate in their behavior. For instance, pigs, which are for generations kept in factory farms, have always been, through many generations, only been in gestation crates, which are like straight jackets. Given a choice, and there's an experiment to show that. There's a beautiful video where a pig which has never seen nesting behavior in its mother or given a chance herself to have a nest, when was given during her delivery or just before her delivery some straw, some little gunny sacks, she demonstrated the behavior of creating a nest before she had her litter of piglets. So it's actually beautiful the way animals, when they're given a chance to exhibit their natural behavior, they do that. But somehow in factory farms, we completely prohibit them, and we use them not as living beings but as properties, just to be destroyed at the time of their commercial value for food for mankind. And that's something that's, you know, one day, I hope we will look back at what we've done to these billions of animals and feel ashamed of ourselves.
Thank you, Body. That's very distressing to hear that their natural um, ways of being are being suppressed in this way. And off the back of this, I would love it if you could delve further into the ways in which we are currently using animals for food labor research and the issue around stray animals in India.
Yeah. So when it comes to farmed animals, the hens are kept in battery cages, pigs are kept in gestation and farrowing crates. Aquaculture, the fish that are grown in ponds and they're sewage fed, these are so overcrowded. There's lack of oxygen, there's built up of gases, there's just built up of chemicals to keep them alive. Then they are, kept in an environment which is very antibiotic heavy. That's why we see all these heavy metals, antibiotics coming out into our food chains also through them. But then, they suffer in those uh, absolutely dirty conditions where they get frustrated, they sort of start getting cannibalistic upon themselves because it's just these are intelligent creatures. And I'll tell you personally, I have had pet hens, roosters for the longest time, and they are very, very clever birds. They are capable of having mood swings, they're capable of showing tantrums or demanding. They can actually interact. But kept in lakhs of birds in a single poultry farm have absolutely just become numbers. They lose their personality completely. Um, Animals in working conditions, like we have seen, especially in pilgrim spots, probably the hill stations where they are used for carrying people or supplies, complete disregard to whether there's lameness, whether there are sores on their backs, where a lot of um, load is put. The saddles are bad, the harnesses are bad. There is no proper hoof care. There is absolute absence of veterinary care. So equines that are very, very actually delicate animals, they are susceptible to colic, etc. They die in thousands in each of these pilgrim shrines or tourist places every year. But again, the profits that the people who rear them and use them obtain are far higher than the price of these animals, to be bred and sold again. So animals, working animals basically are um, worked to death. That's their fate. And sometimes if there's lameness, they're just simply discarded. And sometimes for insurance purposes, even killed, starved to death so that, the horse owner or the equine mule owner gets to get more money out of their death even. Community animals is
I think
another universe.
Brinda may have something to add here. I think Brinda
Oh,
has
right.
seen a lot of this. So, Brinda, do you want to talk about your experience and what you've observed?
Hi everyone, nice to see you all. Gauri, it's sad but very true. I just only have to add to what you said. In fact, a lot of us don't even realize that the wedding ghori that is used for Baratis, in India you use the mare to sit on, is so hopelessly drugged so that it can bear the sound of the drums and the band baja. That's, according to me, a very cross case of abuse. And the poor animal just would otherwise walk and run away, but it's fed so much of opium. And if you remove the colorful thing that they wear on the back, the cloth, and you see so many wounds and so much of cruelty happening there. So yeah, a lot of people don't even realize it. I've been telling people that avoid using these mares for your shadi barat, but people just think it's just one off case, but that's the norm. And as very rightly pointed out, yes, animals are really badly treated. They are starved, they are beaten, they are looked upon as commodities. In fact, even in cities, when I move around in Mumbai, I see a lot of cows tied up and being fed that grass, which is supposed to be a holy thing or whatever, and they are just standing in one place in their own waste and not allowed to move their bodies, and their hoofs are infected. So everywhere you see this, you see ponies that are made to run and they are whipped, and again they have so many wounds. Joyrides for children, but not necessarily for the animal. So there's only one way out, is to create awareness, to have these workshops, to talk to people, to make them realize. In fact, the parents that make their children sit on top of these little ponies, where I was staying earlier, there were a lot of these little children who would come in the evening with their maids and take joyrides on the pony, and the poor animal is so infected with all kinds of wounds. The diseases carry to the children as well as the animal suffers. So we basically have to be aware of all this that is happening, how much torture the animal is being put to, and how much they are made to work with. They're completely exhausted. Bullock carts as well. There are cart races which happen, and they are made to race against their capacity. They are whipped. Their chilies are rubbed into the eyes of the cows to make them walk faster to the slaughterhouse. I mean, there's no end to it. And platforms like this and more awareness through these channels is possibly going to make a difference.
Thank you so much, Brinda, for giving that outline of animals who are used in labor. Bharti, I would love to bring it to yourself to explain to us the plight of the community animals.
Thanks, Amy. So I love that we call them community animals and we don't refer to them as homeless animals, because the understanding here is that the community is their home and we are their caretakers. However, a majority of these animals land up on the roads. How? It's because of abandonment by human beings. In the case of dogs, people bring an animal home without thinking it through, almost, as a toy for their children. And when they realize that the animal requires more care than they had planned for, then the animals are discarded. The roads are every week, I find, animals who are discarded by breeders in the most piteous condition after every possible use has been extracted from the animal. And the same is true of cows that we find on the streets and who are discards of the dairy industry. While the very visible problem that everybody talks about is that of the animal population management, and for which there are scientific solutions like ABC, but the invisible problem really is the extreme marginalization that these animals face. They live in a world which is built by humans, for humans. They survive on the food waste that is generated by human beings. The culture that we had of, when we were children, of when the food was cooked at home. So first, either the crow was fed or the dog was fed, and then the food would be consumed by people in the home. That culture has all but disappeared. So when the community doesn't step up and perform its role as caretakers of community animals, they experience all kinds of intense suffering, diseases, lack of veterinary care, and abuse, killing, maiming, poisoning, sexual abuse. So overall, while NGOs have a significant responsibility in managing population, providing veterinary care, adoptions, making sure that people are adopting dogs, there's a larger civil society here, which is hidden, which is sort of hinted at in the very name that we call these animals, community animals. So, the larger civil society needs to step up and recognize that we all have a role to play in the care of community animals.
Thank you so much, Bharti, for explaining community animals to us. And lastly, I would call Sandeep, if you can please explain to us animals in research, and specifically in India, what are the ethical concerns with the suffering of animals used in scientific experiments?
Sure, Amy. So yeah, animal testing, is a relatively new phenomenon in human history. It's only about 100 years or so that animals have been used. And many of these experiments were started when science hadn't advanced as much. And unfortunately, even with advancing technology, the regulations and regulators haven't caught up with the fact that animal testing is completely ineffective. And more than anything, the ethical concerns are serious. While animals in testing may pale, the number may pale in comparison with other forms of abuse like factory farming, we still have over a million. It's difficult to estimate the number of animals, but our estimate and PETA's estimate is that there are over a million animals in laboratories today. And while the numbers may not be as much as the others, the level of suffering at an individual level is immense. Some really painful things that are done, like simple things like skin irritation tests, which can be done on humans. These chemicals are applied to rabbits' eyes and skin and often leads to blindness. It's a really painful way to, test these chemicals out. Lethal doses for toxicity, to see how much toxins, that are available or allowable in a chemical are fed to these animals, and they're made to bleed. They're made to convulse and die painfully of organ failure. There have been psychological experiments like baby monkeys separated from their mothers and given surrogates made of wire and cloth. It is shown to cause severe psychological trauma and even self-harm in something as young and inexperienced as a baby monkey. There are other tests which, there are many cruel things. I don't want to go into the details of every one, but suffice to say that there are various cruel methods employed, which are completely unnecessary in the present day and age. And there are organizations working towards solution. We'll be talking about solutions a little later in this conversation. But yeah, animals in laboratories have it really hard. So now that we've spoken about the various ways animals are used, there's one person in the audience who had shared a story of Gauri spoke about animals in factory farming, especially dairy animals. And we have Puneet Mehta, the CEO of Naveen Chandra Jewelers, who shared a story with us about a month ago. His story of how he used to support Goshalas. So, Puneet, do you want to tell us about your experience and how it changed your outlook?
Yes,
Yeah.
sure. We made a small donation when my father passed away at one of these Panjra polls, they called it in Gujarat. They called us and said, "Would you mind participating?" And we said yes. And I happened to be visiting there, and I interacted with the manager who was running it for the past 25 years. So, he knew in and out of it. This is completely run by Jain Gujarati families. So, ahimsa is obviously the core principle behind supporting animals. And very candidly, when I spoke to this manager, he said, I asked him, "Yeah, animals, where do they come from?" And he said, farmers they send us these animals. And I said, "Why would farmers be sending you animals?" And he said, because if there's a male baby born, they just discard them immediately because they don't need them for milk. And now there are tractors and other things possibly to take care of the farms. And if there's a female baby born, they will raise that female baby, get it pregnated, injected and pregnated 6, 7 times over the life cycle till she is able to give milk and other stuff. And then she is also discarded. And that's how they end up at Panjra polls. So, the community is doing a great job of, taking care of their life while they are there. But the whole process is about production of what the farmer wants to sell. That was my one tube light moment. And the second one was in my presence in those 25 minutes, a big animal who had just passed away was being taken out on a tractor trailer out of the compound. And I asked the manager, where are they taking him or her? And he said, they will be giving them to the Harijans, to the Harijans in outside the village. And I said, what would they do? And he said, they'll use the leather and other stuff. For me, that was the other tube light moment. And I said, there is not much of distinction fundamentally between vegetarians, non-vegetarians. I think we should just eventually fundamentally look up them as one group and completely giving up animal-based everything as another group, whether we call them vegans or however we want to define them. And that was my moment of actually saying I'm going to be vegan. Fast forward, that was 12 months ago. Last 6 months, our entire kitchen in our factory is 100%, all the lunches are 100% vegan. So 300 people for the last 7 months have vegan food, roti, dal, sabzi, rice, which has been the case before that also for the past 25 years. But this has been a transformation. And everybody at home now talks about it. So I mean, just a short story, but none of my friends outside of my factory actually know what happens in a Panjapur, where are the animals coming from and where are they going out. So just a quick share. Thanks, Sandeep.
Thanks for sharing, Puneet. Appreciate it. And for those who don't know, Panjapol Goshala are used interchangeably, so it's a state in most Goshalas.
Sure. Thanks, Sandeep.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Puneet. That's an amazing story that you had that light bulb moment, and hopefully more people have that opportunity to have a light bulb moment of their own as well. I would love to hand it over now to Dr. Regina. If you can please enlighten us as an expert in nutrition, can you please explain the link between what we're eating and disease mitigation, especially how animal-based foods are detrimental to our overall health and well-being?
Thank you, Amy. Can everybody hear? Thank you so much. I mean, I'm so actually heartfelt hearing all these stories. I used to watch all these documentaries for a long time. I got into a level where I felt like I don't want any animal products, any source origin, maybe around 6-7 years back. Then, it is actually reinforced by my scientific research in the field, actually. So let me give you an overview of that here. Basically, what we do is actually we are training doctors about evidence-based nutrition, primarily focusing on plant-based diet to manage, reverse, or prevent diseases. So this is the using plant-based nutrition, whole food plant-based nutrition as a tool to manage diseases is not just a fad. It is, in fact, actually, it's supported by 60-70 years of compounded research. So, like when a new physician comes into picture, joining us, what we normally tell them or ask them is, what are the health challenges as a physician you're facing today? So most of them, may be knowing about communicable diseases. So what as physicians we face is 72% of the global burden of diseases is due to NCDs, non-communicable diseases, which has a large element of diet or food, which is a major cause of the diseases. In India, ICMR study says that 56% of the diseases due to actually diet, bad diet. It includes actually high saturated fat, trans fat, and salt and stuff, which means a larger consumption of higher consumption of animal products, which is a major cause. Another major study which we normally ask people to read, even common man, is global burden of diseases. That is something which actually is done in around 204 countries, assessing different dietary risk factor for diseases. That also says that the trans fat rich diet, animal products, processed meat is a major cause of disease. At the same time, underconsumption of plant-based product is also cause of diseases. But you know what? All these research and report comes, but it is not integrated actually into the core of the healthcare system. It just comes and goes. People don't know how to do it. Another major concern, which we always, I think Magori already mentioned, for some of you are already mentioned about antibiotic resistance. That is one of the major problems of our century or our era. But nobody is doing much about it. There are few firms which is working on it. Antibiotic resistance, again, the reason, the increased factory farming. The increased factory farming leading to 70% of the antibiotic produced in the world is used for these animals. Through milk and meat, it reaches us, causing antibiotic resistance. Most of these, at the same time, zoonosis is another one, actually, which we are all aware, actually. We just came out of one, COVID-19, coronavirus. It's gone, it's dust. It's gone. We all forgot about it. It's a zoonosis, which means a disease which is actually transmitted from animals to humans. Why it happens? So why it happens is because of the close proximity of humans with these animals in a very unhygienic environment. And 70-80% of the pandemics is caused by zoonotic diseases. Again, a large element of animal husbandry or livestock farming plays a role. Then comes your food insecurity. We always feel that undernutrition, malnutrition. If you look deeply, it has a large element of all these things. Climate crisis, increased land use for animals, and water use for animals, actually having only 20% or less of the things which is used for land or resources are used for plant-based ones. 80% is used for livestock farming. But when you look at the calories coming out of it, 80% of the resources are used for animal husbandry, but 20% of the calories only being used by us for our 20% of the calories only coming from animal-based sources. But it's a very broken system. It's an imbalanced system, which definitely require bigger or better or systemic approach to manage it actually. And like we always say that as intelligent creatures, like we are at the apex of the healthcare system, managing these things. But we do not think that the way we are managing is a very skewed or very biased way of doing it. And it is screwing not only the planet which we are living in, our own health, our fellow creatures' health. The system needs to change, man. We all need to come together because it's a systemic problem. It's a global problem. It's a multi-layered problem. We all need to come together to manage this. I feel that now the science is very clear that predominantly compounded research for the 60, 70 years of research, which shows that a whole food plant predominant eating pattern not only helping humans to thrive by reversing or helping to prevent these diseases, but also helping the planet to heal. So we need to create a system which every individual transforms into a more of a plant-based eating pattern, which can not only help, it's not just a dietary choice, it's in fact a way to safeguard our humanity, our other animals, so that we can thrive and we have a healthy planet with us. That's what I wanted to convey. I think
Thank you so much, Dr. Regina. Thank you so much for that overview. Sneha, given your extensive experience in the protein sector, can you please tell us how animal agriculture is impacting the environment and why plant-based protein is a need of the hour from an environmental perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. And just very enlightening to hear from all the fellow experts and taking on from all these insights. I think the fundamental thing to bear in mind is that industrial animal agriculture lies at the intersection of a number of challenges, whether it's environmental devastation, whether it's climate change, whether it's food insecurity, as Regina was just mentioning, and public health and AMR, antibiotic resistance, but also the welfare of farming communities, right? So this slide, as you can see, really draws out that intersectional nature of this problem. And I'll go through some of these in very brief order, and how actually shifting the way we eat and lowering our meat consumption, eliminating meat from the food, can really propel us in a better direction overall. And that's where alternatives to conventional meat, like plant-based meat alternatives, cultivated meat, fermentation-derived protein alternatives, can really play a pivotal role at shifting this consumption. So from an environmental devastation perspective, animal agriculture alone accounts for about 11 to 20% of GHG emissions. And it's in the top three when it comes to global emissions as well. And a shift towards alternatives away from conventional animal meat eating can slash emissions significantly. And that shift is what can offer a scalable means of meeting everybody's climate goals throughout the world, but also giving all of us as human beings a chance to achieve carbon neutrality that will enable future generations to live more sustainably. One of the questions that we ask is the world's population is continuing to rise, and we're going to hit roughly 9 to 10 billion people by 2050. And if we continue to consume the way we do, right from resources to the way we consume food, the food system is not robust enough to feed 10 billion people by 2050 if we follow current projections, and especially if we follow current meat eating projections. I know, Regina, you touched upon food insecurity slightly as well, and fully agree that growing crops to feed them to farm animals is just inefficient. The calorie insufficiency is very evident. And also, when we grow these crops and feed them to animals, it does drive up the price of grains and legumes. So that also is a critical challenge. And India's biggest challenge is malnutrition today. Access to affordable, high quality protein is a challenge in India today. Protein insufficiency is a challenge today. So is there an opportunity here for alternatives, plant-based proteins to come in and enable that shift from a nutritional standpoint? I think there's been a lot been said about animal welfare and public health, so I'll skip those points. But going on to the global evidence, right? If we can move on to the next slide, is that it's really well known now that there's not just one or two people talking about this, but at the highest levels of international conversation, people are talking about the way we eat and how the food system is broken. One of the key drivers of this brokenness is industrialized animal agriculture. We've had global reports right from the 2020 pandemic phase where people started thinking about this more and more. We've had reports from the World Bank, from the UN Environment Program, from Climate Works Foundation, from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and also gene assessments that have come out. And they all examined the potential of alternative proteins as one of the key solutions to tackle the climate crisis as it stands today. In fact, last year's report from the World Bank, which was from May 2024, it notes that the food production of the world causes 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions. And that report also examines 26 of the different agri-food sectors' most promising emissions mitigations interventions and alternative proteins. So a shift away from meat-eating tendencies to plant proteins and fermentation-derived proteins, cultivated meat. That is ranked as second for a climate mitigation potential, and that's huge. So we have an opportunity. We have a solution here when it comes to the way we can shift our reliance on industrialized animal agriculture. And whilst in India, our per capita consumption of animal products is quite low. If you look at the global consumption of meat products, of course, India ranks low, but that doesn't mean that we are a very vegetarian population. Actually, quite the contrary. We're very much the omnivores.
Yeah.
And it's our religious and our cultural context that kind of has those ebbs and flows when it comes to our meat consumption. Meat is not center of plate in India. But however, it is to be noted that developing economies also are anticipated to increase when it comes to meat consumption. So as economies develop, there is that rising incomes will bring about more demand for conventional meat, for seafood, for eggs, for dairy. And according to the UN FAO, the India per capita meat consumption is growing. With just the poultry increase, it's projected to be almost 850% more by 2040. So even if the productivity levels right now are low, we do account already for a lot of the livestock related emissions currently. And this has an impact on our current agricultural food systems. There is a significant pressure on water. There's a significant pressure on land use. There is shrinking forests that we can see. There are issues of water scarcity. All of these things, when these resources, your land, your water, is being diverted towards livestock, there's less of access available when it comes to human population. So where is it? Where is the inflection point? Where is the lever for systemic change? And here, I know it's a very complex, interconnected issue, but I feel like one of the most promising solutions over here is a shift towards alternatives when it comes to plant proteins and the way we eat. And an understanding that diets are complex and food preferences are complex, and there need to be other alternatives in the market that are nutritious, that are available easily, and are also delicious, because food needs to be delicious. And we as a culture in India know how much we love our food. So I think all of that needs to be taken care of as we use food technology, food innovation. Just like we've leaped into digital India, I think there's an opportunity here to tap into biopharma, agri-food to make that shift on food systems level as well.
Thank you
Sonia.
so
And I
much.
think, Sneha, I think only 13% of Indians identify as vegetarian. I think it's a stat I read somewhere. It surprises many people.
Yeah, almost 70% are omnivores. Yes, most people identify as meat eating.
Which is crazy, Sneha, because most people have this view that India is predominantly a vegetarian country. So that's very interesting. Sandeep, as a backbone organization, how does the IAF visualize going about addressing these issues?
Sure, Amy. The problem is vast, as we've understood so far. There are over 4 billion animals, many of them trapped in exploitative systems. So there's no one way, there's no one silver bullet that will make life better for these animals. So we need to approach the problem in many angles and in every possible angle. So as a backbone organization, we started about 2.5 years ago, and there have been many organizations that have been around. Gauri's organization, Bharti's, and several other amazing organizations that have been doing work in this space. So we thought aligning them in 4 categories of interventions will help us bring in different kinds of funders, bring in different kinds of organizations. So the 4 we identified was talent. Firstly, the sector has not been a very glamorous place to work in, is not seen as a desirable profession. So we're trying to change that by bringing in organizations that have, very good leadership, good funding to do good work, and therefore be able to hire and attract good talent and groom talent and leaders. To this end, we've supported a program called the Ahimsa Fellowship, where we bring in 20 odd people across the country for an 8-month intensive full-time program. So that's one example of creating leaders. Over the last 3 years, we've developed 45 leaders, 38 of whom are working full-time in the animal protection movement, and a few other initiatives we're doing, supporting other organizations who are developing talent. Awareness is a crucial lever because many people are just not aware. We don't wake up in the morning thinking we want to exploit an animal, but it's just that we don't know the impact of our choices. And the industry does a very good job of keeping these kind of details away from us. So we believe that making people more aware of how animal products are produced, how the animals are treated, will make that shift in people to make more compassionate choices. Also, children are very compassionate naturally. We're born very compassionate, we lose it along the way. So we have a program where we support an organization that goes to schools and engages with children and helps them understand the sentience of animals, and they even get to interact with an animal to see what it really feels like to experience what an animal is like. And once they grow up, they will make more compassionate choices. They will be more aware of animal sentience and hopefully, become leaders in the movement themselves. There's only so much an organization can do, or only so much a movement can do. For a vast country like India, it's very important to energize the government machinery, to bring in policymakers, to change syllabus at a national level, to introduce compassion into education, to bring in more stringent laws to protect animals, bring in more enforcement. So there are various organizations in India that are working towards better enforcement standards, working on litigations to get better outcomes for animals. Gauri's organization does some of that. FIAPO, Bharti's organization, does some of that. HSI, PETA. So policy is a very important aspect and the best way to scale the reach of anything we do for animals. And lastly, and most importantly, we need to bring in capital to make organizations more effective, to be able to attract good talent, to be able to spread the awareness. We need funds, and that's where we have organizations like Upadhyay Foundation, Ashrayasta Trust, who are giving for various causes, but also see it important to see that animal welfare and animal causes are important to be considered in their portfolio. So capital is the one thing that makes everything else work. Amy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Thank you for that. Sonia, how does AHT view the landscape of animal welfare? And can you please enlighten us on what are some of the areas that you are invested in?
Thanks, Amy. I was smiling when Sandeep said, capital makes everything go. But I think from this conversation, it really doesn't. I must say that conversations like this are like stepping stones, right? And I don't think these conversations could have happened 5 years back or 5 years later. This is just the right time for us to, speak about animal welfare. So one is that the way that we see landscape is deepening, 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 and strengthening, right? And I think this is about time with the organizations that we've been hearing, and I've been hearing Bharti speak, about this entire change in vocabulary of not using strays, but using community animals. I think we have to build that vocabulary in the landscape itself.
as Ashia said, trust, we started this journey with the heart and passion, and over time, we have really deepened that passion into more systemic engagement. So we are in the same place as many of the organizations that have spoken right now are, right? We basically deep diving into certain areas of animal welfare to understand what more we can do there and what more we can support. And more than often, how we can learn, like co-learn and partner with the organizations to learn. So a bit about some of the programs that we started. We started with something like an ABC center about five years ago, and we realized that that was a low-hanging fruit that we needed to work with. But right now, the way we look at it is that we're looking at how we can work comprehensively to provide holistic care to animals on community animals across. And what we are doing is looking at rescue, rehabilitation, and treatment of animals, and setting up these small institutions across different urban cities to actually build in the quality processes and systems to allow them and enable them to work even more better with animals with the quality and the same quality that, for example, a human would access a hospital or a healthcare center would actually get, right? And that's a massive, massive journey for us. The other things that we're doing is, and I know that folks here have spoken with such passion about, about the cage, the cruelty within the cages, and also the transportation hurdle that the animals go through. So what we're doing also, we're saying that if in areas, in really far-flung areas like the rural areas where animals cannot access the best facilities or equipments, let's get the equipments to them, right? So can we give the best of ultrasound, the best of x-rays, the best of diagnosis tools to shelter homes across the country to actually allow them to diagnose and treat animals at the area rather than transport them to far-flung places and hospitals that perhaps don't even exist for animals. The third thing that we're doing, and somebody spoke about elephants, right? So we are also looking at how we could support organizations to not really rescue, but also bring animals that have been facing a lot of trauma, bring them to a setup wherein they can be cared for, and focus on building the capital for that setup. Right. So those are a few things. Of course, we're working with Dasra and AIF to build in model cities. We're wondering how that goes and how will that go. But I think that's a good learning experience for us. And yeah, it's been a long journey for us. We are looking forward to go to building more partnerships. A little bit about what we'll get into is the challenges that we face is one is that of course we need more institutions in the place and good capable institutions. And I'm hoping Sandeep and Dasra and Upadhyay Foundation and everybody here will work together to bring that comprehensiveness in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and that's one of the goals of the fellowship program as well, Sonia, to develop leaders who will not only join the existing organization, but some of them have gone on to start their own organizations, and hopefully over the years go from strength to strength, and we'll have a rich network of organizations supporting the cause.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, Amy, back to you.
Very recently, the animal welfare area was discussed at Baku at the COP29. So I think we're heading the right way. We just need to accelerate a little bit and put our feet on the gas pedal.
Thank you,
Sounds
Sonia.
good.
Thank you, Sandeep. Over to you, Brinda. Can you please share with us what kind of projects you support and how has your collaboration with the IAF been?
So we are privileged and lucky to be with Sandeep, and he's such an inspiring person. Basically, it's a long, long haul, and it's a very uphill task, and it's has many, many layers. So it's a small beginning that we've started with, and there's a lot of reform that is required in the laws. There's a lot of advocacy, policy reform. We need all those changes. We need to make the system hear what we are saying, and I think IAF is doing a good job. That's where we have put all our hopes in that. Supporting them in some small way will possibly take them further on to their achievement of making changes in the redundant laws, bringing about awareness. People will be aware. We'll have more workshops like this. There'll be capacity building of people who are already in it. So that's where we come in, and we hope we'll carry it further. Also, animal welfare is not just one thing. There's so much else. There's so much that it is related to climate change. It is related to biodiversity. We have so much to do, and I don't know where to start, but I think this is a small step.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Sonia, Brinda, how do you guys feel that we can bring in more family foundations to contribute to this cause?
That's a tough one because, um, well, when I have a great sense of love and personal commitment to the animal world, including the world of reptiles and snakes, and I want them all to thrive and to all of them to live peacefully, happily on this planet. It's never that we are alone, but that kind of passion is rare. And the only way we can possibly trigger it is by having these workshops, talking to people, showing them various films on how each and every sentient being has a right, on the planet, and how it is our duty to ensure that. So family philanthropy is something which it has to come from within, and we have to keep appealing to them. We have to keep bringing it up again and again. And I think Dasra is doing a good job by continuously bringing it to the notice of people, philanthropists and others, industrialists, big people who can possibly join the fund culture, fundraising. That's the only
Yeah.
way to.
Sonia?
Yeah. I mean, there are so many ways, I must tell you, right? Because I also come from the gender space, and we had the same conversation. How do you make gender more mainstream, right? And it is important that we work together. And I think socializing the space very cohesively with other funders, right? Creating a good frame for the space is an important way to move ahead with funding. And being in the philanthropy space, we understand frames, we understand systems, we understand goals, right? So creating these large goals in the animal welfare space, whether it is the domestic animal welfare or the wildlife space, is an important way that we can move ahead. Creating a common framework is also just socializing this framework becomes very tangible for people to actually imagine the pathways, right? So that's one. We have, I think, the animal welfare space. We, as an organization, we have been actively engaging with it, and it's important. What we've realized is that it is basically both the organizations and philanthropists meeting somewhere midway, right? So while philanthropists like us are actively reaching out to the space, there needs to be more institutions, more strong ecosystem to actually reciprocate, right, and meet us somewhere. So setting that system up for the first movers, that is us and Pade Foundation and AIF, we are the first movers in the space. So actually putting our capital into it to strengthen the space, build in more institutions like the Ahimsa fellowship will actually solve for so much more in the area of raising funds.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Well, thank you everyone, firstly, for your amazing insights. I feel like we've learned so much from this conversation and really highlighted the issues that are at hand and the potential solutions that can be there. And before we wrap up the session, we have a number of questions that have come through. So we have actually run out of time, by the way, but we would love to address some of these questions. So Sandeep, would you like to take the reins here with the questions? And Edna, can you advise how much time we have for question and answer?
I think we can.
Sandeep
can take this.
Just to know how much time we have will be useful information so that we can see which questions to delve into. But I see one question about climate. Sorry, this is moving really fast, so I'll just look at the.
Just from a time check, we do have about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Just looking at the questions. Why does funding for animal welfare not form part of the focus areas of any large foundation or CSR? What is the cause? Why does the cause not resonate? What can be done? So actually, this is a good question for me, asked by Saloni Mittal Ghosh. So India Animal Fund, one of our primary objectives is to raise funds for the cause, and we speak to a lot of CSR leaders. I think traditionally, it's all about the awareness. It started off with education, healthcare, and upskilling. Those are the traditionally popular CSR themes. And we lately see more and more organizations buying into the idea of sustainable development goals and linking sustainable development goals to ethical treatment of animals and the impact it has on the climate and environment is actually helping us open more doors. People are beginning to understand that it's a holistic approach they need to look at. So currently, we're at 0.6% penetration. So of the 26,000 crores of CSR approximately a year, only 0.6% comes to animals. And even in that, a lot of it goes to actually livestock and helping farmers exploit animals more. But we expect to see a trend. We expect to see a better trend going forward with more organizations coming forward, more projects that are successful. So I think nothing sounds like success. So when we have a good success story, we can go to more corporates and they'll be more willing to listen. Through the course of our existence, we've got 6 corporates to support animal causes, and we have a few more in the pipeline. So we expect this space to improve. Any other questions? What has been your experience in integrating? Sorry, go ahead. Amy.
Sorry, I was just going to say there was a good question here by Breeze asking what will be the follow-up of today's online session. It's too precious to end this way. Is it okay to have a common platform like a WhatsApp group? I think this is a very interesting question, actually, because, I feel like we have so many amazing change makers dispersed everywhere, but do we have something that brings everyone together to keep these conversations ongoing, to keep information together? It's something I've been thinking about recently as well.
Yeah, actually, we have a slide on the closing, Manvi, if you could put that up. But so we intend to create a community, and we hadn't thought of a WhatsApp group, so maybe we'll share this link with everybody who joined. We'll create a WhatsApp group where people can post their questions and give their ideas. One thing we're working on is to start a mass awareness movement inspired by Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and similar such slogans and campaigns by various organizations, including the government. So we want to do something for animals. That's something we're working on. And that can use a lot of ideas from crowdsourcing. So maybe that will be a good way to engage more people. So thanks for that suggestion. We will start a WhatsApp group. We'll manage it, India Animal Fund. And here are some email IDs you can write to Siddharth of Upadhyaya Foundation, a co-sponsor of this event. And there's my email ID as well there. We've listed out both the websites of our organizations. Feel free to reach out to us, but we will find a way to reach out to you with the link that we will create for this. Thanks, Amy.
Great. Sandeep, are there any other
questions?
Maybe
one more question. What has your experience been in integrating your work with the animal welfare boards, which are government enabled? Actually, Gauri, I don't know if Gauri is still here. She would have been the right person to answer this, but maybe Bharti can take this up. How have we been able to succeed in working with animal welfare boards and SPCAs?
So the Animal Welfare Board prescribes many rules that work for the welfare of animals. For example, the ABC rules that are there really are rules that govern how animal birth control should be done. Animal Welfare Board of India also, in some cases where we are trying to bring about policy change or legislative change, we partner with the AWBI to either become a party to any cases that we are pushing for. Also, I don't know if anyone, Sandeep mentioned the SPCAs. It is mandatory in India because of a Supreme Court decision that every district in the country needs to have a Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, SPCA, that should be there and functional, along with a veterinary polyclinic, funds, a fully running SPCA. But in many parts of the country, that is not there. So there are many legislative systems that are there, but the gap in India is predominantly, actually, India has wonderful laws. Actually, the laws are, though we are always pushing for change, the laws are good. The gap largely lies in enforcement, and this is where we are really working with the Animal Welfare Board of India to push for enforcement on some of these policies.
And at a movement level, thanks, Bharti, but at a movement level as well, there have been 5 districts where we've initiated what we call the Model District Project, where we go in and activate the SPCA in that district. And it takes a few years because you need to get multiple government officials to work together in tandem, the district collector, the animal husbandry officer, the superintendent of police. So it can take somewhere between 3 to 5 years to actually get the government machinery behind us. But once that grounding is done, the tone of conversations in that district changes. Animals are looked at differently. Animal issues are handled with more care and compassion. So that's one of the programs that we would like to scale, and is one of the programs we actually show to corporates that in their own district, they can be good corporate citizens by supporting this model district project to activate the SPCA in that district. So I think, yeah, we have a few more questions. We'll note them down and we'll try to answer them offline. But thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I'm looking at some of the comments. It's great to see fellow animal lovers, and we look to answer all the questions offline.
Thank you so
Amy,
much,
over to you.
Sandeep. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining, and our panelists for your dedication to the cause. I think we can all agree that India is a land of ahimsa, yet the way that we are currently treating our furry friends doesn't align with our own moral compass, and not to mention the health and environmental concerns as highlighted today that's associated with animal agriculture. So this is clearly a pressing issue that needs urgent action, and we all want to build an India that we can be truly proud of. And for that, we need to unite, bringing together capital, advocacy, awareness, and talent to drive that change. So these links provided here encourage you all to get involved, ask questions. You can support animal welfare organizations advocating for the policy changes. You can, on an individual level, make conscious lifestyle choices. And of course, on the screen, you've got the links to the resources there, the fellowship page, links to the NGOs, donation platforms, and advocacy tools. So this will help you to take the first step towards participating to make animal lives better. Thank you so much, everyone.